Hello, hi, and welcome to EmpathicFire. I am your reader, Jay. This is going to be a Distillery reading for the month of June. What is going on, Collective? How are you guys doing? I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the Distillery reading for the month of June, guys. If you're unfamiliar with the series, if this is the first time you're checking the series out, what we do here is we take a look back on the month that has just passed, so that would be June 2021, and we look at some of the overall messages that affect the collective in terms of my reading. So I go back, excuse me, I go back and I pick out the cards that appear most often in all 12 zodiac signs times 2, so 24 readings. So I did that here. That's the 2 cards this month are very interesting coming out of June. So 2 cards that appeared most often. The second pile here is what appears a little less frequently, but still significant enough for us to care about. And then we're going to do some further clarification with this third deck. And the point is to kind of, we don't want to say, you know, I think a lot of times when we do tarot or we think about what's going on in our lives, we think about, you know, future, and like we don't really take a moment to kind of sit with or stew, not stew, but sort of marinate. Let's do another food analogy. Kind of marinate on what we just went through. So that's the purpose of this type of reading. If you like this reading, make sure you like it, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, do all that fun stuff, okay? So we're going to set this deck to the side, and then again, we're going to clarify a little bit later on with this secondary deck. But this top deck, or this top stack, and it's not really a stack, it's just a pair of cards, interestingly enough, only 2 came out. I think I've had it, so 3 have come out, 7 have come out, or 6 or something like that. So very interesting that these 2 cards are the only 2 that appeared most often. So not much of a shuffle to do here, but let's get into it. And guys, anything you want from me, it's in the description box. Timestamp is down there if you want to skip over all of this. If you want to find me for a personal reading, you can find out how to do so by looking below. And if you haven't followed me on Instagram, might not be worth your time, but if you want to show some passive support, you can give me a follow on Instagram as well, okay? All right, let's see. Of these 2 cards, let's figure out the order in which we're going to talk about it. That feels, yep, they're like, and they want me to flip it like that. So, boom. All right. So, 3 of Swords and the High Priestess. Again, this is a collective reading, so it applies no matter your sun sign, moon sign, rising, any of that stuff. High Priestess, though, secondary major for Cancer, sometimes also associated with Pisces. You can apply that if it fits your story, but, you know, this is like giving me this feeling of self-betrayal. You know, I wasn't up on the astrology. Personally, I've been hit very hard in this retrograde season because we just had Mercury retrograde, and I believe Pluto and Neptune are still in retrograde, and they will be for the majority of the rest of the year. And so I've just personally been out of sorts, and I feel like it's a similar energy, but more so on, like, this could be reactional for a few of you. This could be suffering a heartbreak, suffering some type of loss, suffering some type of heartache, and then being pulled or pushed or compelled somehow to go into a deeper meditative state, or to go into a self-reflective state, to sit in silence, or to sit in your feelings, sit in your distress, sit in your anger, sit in your frustration, whatever it may be, and come to terms with it through some type of process, through some type of ritual, is what I feel. A ritual is coming through here with the High Priestess. It doesn't always happen that way for me, but I feel like ritual / behavior they're giving me. So something that is done repetitively. So for some of you, you know, that could translate into you've gone through something that's really distressing. It doesn't have to be a breakup because it's the 3 of Swords. It doesn't have to be third-party situation. If that applies to your situation, great. But whatever you've gone through, viewer, it has triggered you into comforting behaviors. High Priestess, moon energy, the home, where we find solace, where we replenish ourselves, where we rest, yes, and reflect as well. So this could manifest in, for some of you might have some compulsive behaviors that have come back up, like compulsively eating, compulsively cleaning, compulsively escaping reality through substance use, whatever. There's something that has resurfaced because of what happened here in the 3 of Swords. Now, going back to, I think I said it in the beginning, like self-betrayal, I think came through, or something about the self. So there's a second line in here. It could be related to the first line, in that the betrayal is to ignore this. The betrayal is to ignore your intuition, to not align with it, or to not be aware of it, to push it away, wish it away. And that's down to, not down to, but it can come out in the way of regret. So for some of you, this heartbreak, this heartache is kind of, I don't want to say it's not about fault, but it is sort of like this feeling of, I should have known better, I should have done better, I should have, shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? So there is this looking back on your own behavior, your own words, or your involvement in a situation, no matter to what degree, no matter for what intention. But there is sort of like this, if I was never there, if I didn't say these things, then none of this would have happened and I wouldn't feel so awful right now. So there is sort of like this blame, self-blame, guilt, self-guilt, thing at play here. Anything else? It could be, now for some of you, a third possibility here, or all three could be possible. Take as much as this resonates with you, leave what does not resonate, okay? But for others of you, as much as this is the reaction to, this is also the reaction from. What do I mean when I say that? To, from. So when you're reacting to something, you're not necessarily working with that energy, or you're not working with that circumstance. You're kind of, like I said, deflecting and putting things to the side, and dipping into your compulsions, what have you. To react from something is a little bit more proactive, so that could apply sometime down the line. That could be applying to you now. It could have been you never reacted to, you've been reacting from since the beginning, who knows. But if you're reacting from the Three of Swords, for some of you, this is like a deep spiritual awakening, wake-up call. For you, for someone else, I don't know. This could be someone you're dealing with, a friend of yours, a loved one, it does not matter. But there's some like realization that, again, like I'm getting this idea of a trigger, like being triggered into something, being catapulted into something. So there's this really adverse reaction to the Three of Swords, right? And instead of being too angry, too sad, feeling those feelings, that's important. But then there's like this realization of, I can't let this Three of Swords get the better of this. In terms of tarot, this is a minor arcana, this is a major arcana. You can, but the reality is, or at least the natural, quote unquote, the natural way of the tarot is that majors always trump minors. Or majors have bigger influence or bigger impact or have a wider impact, right? So the power or the oomph behind things is a little heftier with the High Priestess and less so here. So for some, that has been a conscious effort. The spat that I had with my friend, the breakup I had with my boyfriend, girlfriend, the divorce I had, the third party situation I had, the loss of a job, the getting fired, the getting laid off, the losing a loved one, whatever happened here, that is, again, how some of you are viewing this, circumstantial. It's not the end of the world, or it's just an end of a certain chapter in your life, a certain phase in your life, what have you. And so there is this conscious, very concerted, conscious effort to dive into the spiritual, I guess the spiritualness of it all. Some of you it's religious, some of you it's non-denominational, some of you it's, more scientific than anything else. But there is like this concerted effort to find answers, come to an understanding for yourself, come to an understanding as it relates to other people, what have you. Get the higher message within the thing that you suffered through. That's very high level, and not everybody would be appreciative of that. Not everybody is interested in that, but some of you are. You're very interested in the rhyme and the reason of what you've gone through and how you can apply that to your own spiritual journey. Or like I said before, some of you, this is a spiritual awakening. You've never thought of this before, and this is the first time you've had these types of inclinations, these types of curiosities. So yeah. All right. So let's clarify a little bit. I think everybody knows what their Three of Swords situation is. Third party, what have you, cheating, what have you, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of something that meant something to you, disappointment, heartache, heartbreak, okay? So I don't think we need to clarify that. So I want to grow and get further information on the High Priestess. Well, I mean, this is like kind of, again, it's a distilled look back at what was going on in June. So what can you tell us and tell the viewer about what happened in June as related to the High Priestess? What is the significance of the High Priestess out of the messages that we did here in June for the collective? What more can you tell me about the High Priestess, okay? All right. That's interesting. They want me to deal like that. I don't usually deal like this. 3, 4, or 3? 3, okay. All right, and let's flip it like that. So Temperance, Knight of Swords, and the Page of Wands. Okay, for some of you, this is a family event. This is a family story. Page and Knight, young children, teenage energy. Not that you don't have to be dealing with children or teenagers, but you would be dealing with people who have that younger sensibility about them, or that, you know, young spirit about them, or they are physically your children, or there are children in the scenario. Regardless, I feel in the dynamic where there's multiple people, you might have, coming off of this feeling of betrayal, 2 people that have turned their backs on each other mutually. You know, to hear one of them tell it, maybe they would say, oh, he or she betrayed me, he or she stabbed me in the back, and I was in the right, and I never did anything wrong. And the other person might say the same thing too. So it's very subjective, yes? Yeah, I feel these 2 people are hot-headed, short-tempered, or impulsive, like really self-serving energy. Again, related to this being younger energy with the Page and the Knight. When you have younger energy within a person, regardless of their physical age, their spiritual age is very telling, or the spiritual age is always going to manifest through the physical, right? So this person could be 60-something years old, but acting like they're 14. You understand? So you've got 2 people who haven't had, for whatever reason, haven't matured spiritually speaking, and they act out towards each other or within the situation. I'm sensing for some, this is like a friendship or a family situation. In others, like I said before, this could be a spousal situation. It could be 2 people who, when they were young, they became a couple, and now that they're older, I mean, that's a classic story, right? When you're in your late teens, early 20s, maybe even sometimes up into your mid 20s, and you get married or you begin a family, and then 20 years later you discover, I didn't have much of my quote unquote youth, or my, you know, I just didn't have those experiences because I had to be a mom when I was 18 years old. I became a father when I was 21, you know, things like this. And it's not to blame the experience or blame the children that come out of it or the family that you create out of it, but it does speak to somebody who doesn't have balance. And so I'm sensing that some of you have dealt with a person who is quote unquote acting out because they feel they have missed out on something. So there's a lot of movement here with the Knight of Swords and the Page of Wands. Both of those energies are exploratory energies. People who want to have a good time, want to see what life has to offer, you know, make good friends, or have great experiences, etc., etc. To do this in the context of building a family, starting a business, being committed to anything, these are not characters, Knight of Swords, Page of Wands, that are good at commitment. Temperance energy. So the energy is consistently imbalanced. And the call, High Priestess, the call to action is to get in balance, right? To make sure that things don't go over the top or become too chaotic, yes? Temperance also major arcana for Sagittarius. You could be dealing Air sign energy, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, fire sign energy, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. It's a general, it's a collective, you know, don't hold on to any sign unless it's like super significant to you. Okay. So yeah, I think for some, this could be reconciling with a family member or a loved one, a spouse who's quote unquote gone off the rails. Like, I feel in some ways it's about control, because the Knight of Swords definitely doesn't like to be controlled, is beholden to practically no one. And the Page of Wands is like too curious and too lit up by external stimuli to really sit and focus and, again, be committed to one thing for too long. You know, both of them, they can make a good go of it, like maybe, in terms of like an entire lifetime, maybe for a small fraction of an entire lifetime can be focused on something, but eventually would grow bored of it, feel they have had their fill of whatever they've experienced, family life, business life, traveling the world or not traveling the world. There's something here about wanting to go and get more, to have a different experience that has always sort of been the enemy in the situation. That's always been the enemy. And not to excuse it, not to say it's okay, but again, I'm compelled to talk about this scenario of a family that started at a young age. So people who are married at 19, 20, 22, whatever, and you've got, 4 kids by the time you're 32, or by the time you're 36, whatever. And it's just like having this feeling of I've missed out, having not regrets for the children. If there are children here who have come out of a relationship, there isn't regret about having the children, but there is sort of like this, in order to have these kids, to bring them up, to try and raise them in a good manner, I had to throw away my own childhood. I had to throw away, quote unquote, the best years of my life and all that kind of stuff. Yes. So there's that kind of residual regret that someone is coming to terms with. Okay. If that's not specifically your situation, it's very similar. So it could be that someone, has worked since they were a teenager, and, they worked like a dog, and so they weren't able to travel the world like they wanted to, or they didn't go to school. Maybe someone went to a trade school, but they always wanted to go to university or college and have that type of education. But instead, they've been a lifelong plumber or a roofer or whatever, right? So there is this, like, I wish I had made different decisions, but the High Priestess is sort of a gateway. So I feel like, viewer, if you're thinking, how do I get this back on track? How do I put effort and emphasis on what was before? How do I keep my home a home? How do I keep my family intact? This feels like it's not really possible, because someone here, excuse me, is incredibly compelled to explore. They will not be stopped. And that's sort of their journey, or that's your journey if it's you, you know what I mean? So let's just see what we can get from this other tarot deck regarding the upcoming scenario, or what's coming up in this scenario. What's the continuation of this storyline for the collective, and then we're going to head out. So what's the continued message here? What else can the viewer expect in this situation coming from the future moments coming up down the line? What else is going on here? What's coming up? What else is going on here? What's coming up? Hierophant. Okay. Interesting. So for some, it's a new commitment, which is kind of ironic since I said, well, no, I kind of hinted to that, but we'll talk about it. One more, please. At least one more. Thank you. All right. I think like that. That's good. Yeah, they're fine. We'll talk about it in a second. So Hierophant, 4 of Wands for sure, and the World. Okay, new commitment on the horizon for some of you. Now, remember I said that these two characters here could be more than one person, could be one person, it doesn't matter. But there's an energy marker here of somebody who doesn't go in for commitment, who doesn't stay focused for a very long period of time. But I said that over the course of a life. So if a life is 80 years, 90 years, but you've spent, 15 of those 90 in a commitment, that's a small fraction out of the 90. I'm not good at percentages off the top of my head, but I believe that would be less than 20%, I think. I don't know. Don't quote me. I'm not good at math. But, and out of 100%, 20% is not a lot. It's not even close to half, right? So, interestingly enough, for some of you, if this was a story about divorce, if this was a story between you and someone that you loved or someone that you know and they're going through this, there will be a new commitment made in the future. Now, the future doesn't mean tomorrow. It could be for some of you. But, the future is indefinite, right? The future could be 20 years from now. Or, again, tomorrow. It's all relative to each of your individual situations. But Hierophant, Four of Wands, and the World. That's another locking it down message. This this is implying that something is going to be made solid after it's sort of broken apart. I don't see reconciliation between whoever's in this storyline. If someone has left a family, if someone has walked away from a job or been pushed out of a job, it's not to go back and recommit to what we've done already. This is new commitment. This is a merging of new energies. This is getting into, World card, a new chapter in life, okay? Hierophant, Taurus, World, Capricorn, also fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Could be dealing, don't have to be. But yes, going into a new phase of life, going into a new phase, it's one of those things where I haven't experienced this, but it's kind of like some of those anecdotal stories that you might hear. Why is this on my screen? Get out of here. Oh God, and then I did that. Okay, there we go. Anecdotal stories where people will say, like divorced couple, like you have a couple, they divorce and then they remarry different partners, and then those two new partnerships, they become friends, right? And it's like this acknowledgement, not always, but sometimes there's this acknowledgement of, oh man, because you two were married before, that made my now wife, a better partner for me, and I thank you for that. It's kind of like this. This over here, this up here, crappy. Doesn't feel good. Very tumultuous. Needs a lot of healing. Temperance, yes? And it's going to happen in its way. And then somewhere down the line, another commitment happens. Another business opportunity. A different job in a different industry. A different location where to raise the kids. We're going to uproot our family. We're, good old Boise. Thank you, Boise, but we're moving the family to Germany or whatever. And that newness, that new commitment that is made is a little, I gotta tell you, it's a lot more solid. This feels a lot more structured and stable, feels happier, which is kind of interesting because on their own, I don't take the Hierophant or the World card to be the happiest of cards, but I think it's of sound mind. So maybe happy isn't the best word, maybe peaceful. Maybe this previous connection was, like I said, tumultuous, rowdy, maybe it was displeasurable, what have you. And here it's just like at every turn, things are palatial almost, not to say zero fights, not to say zero disagreements, not to say always, sunshine and rainbows, but overall, and that can happen. Okay? I always cut myself off. That can happen. If your first marriage was the one where you had the kids and you moved 2 or 3 times as you upgraded your homes and you got better jobs and, your finances became more solid, blah, 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 blah. And then, the kids leave and go off to college and begin their own families. And then you're divorcing in your 50s, divorcing in your 60s, and then meeting someone else. I mean, it's kind of hard to not have that be the more quote unquote blissful relationship because there's less drama involved. There's less things that could go awry, or there's less growing pains involved, right? yeah, so that is going to be the distilled reading for June. If you guys like this reading, if you like this type of reading, let me know. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment and do all that fun stuff. For this particular reading, I'll be back at this rate, probably in the beginning of August, to talk about July. So until then, guys, I appreciate you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.